Sepp Straka is your winner. He was on 59 watch until he double bogeyed the last hole. I mean, he could have also birdied hole 17 and maybe played a little bit more conservative when it came to hole 18. But anyways, he he played really, really well. I think he shot 9 under. I think he was 9 under for his final round with a double on the last hole. And Todd and Smalley had a chance to come back to win, or to at least tie him, but kind of faltered towards the end. And it gave Sepp Straka the win. I'm not going to talk about the rest of the leaderboard. I just want to get straight into the bucket system, just to show you how well the bucket system did. Now, the one column I want you to focus on is this one here, where it says success. I'm looking at this year's totals. A Y is an indication that that bucket projection that I had for the week was correct. So how do I figure that out? Well, we take the range of the max projection, the min projection. Remember, we always round down with this number, and we always round up with this one. So we take these projections, and then we see how many golfers finish inside the top 10. Now, if that number falls outside of that range, which you can see for this first one it does, I then look at the optimal lineup. And then that number being 1 means that that number falls within the 0 to 2 projection that I had. That makes that bucket a success. So I do that with all of them, and you can go and check. As I scroll through this, pause the video if you want to double check me. But actually, it does show there was one bucket that was unsuccessful, but guess what? If you're with me in the strategy videos, or at least the preview videos, we always talk about there being a 2-point buffer, always. And we will always want to go down. When we can't, we go up. So we always would want to bring our projection down unless it hits 0 first. That would then bump the projection for the max projection up. So what I mean by that, when we take a look at these projections, you see it says 0.42 to 0.69. Well, we can't make this less than 0. So if we need a 2-point projection, that goes up to 2. And what do you know? There are 2 right there. So all the buckets were successful. That means 100% success rate when it comes to the buckets. The last piece that comes with the Sweet Spot process is talking about the Marquee Tee Times. So as we look at the Marquee Tee Times, I go ahead and put a filter on this. I rank order the groups based off their Sweet Spot ranks. The 3 golfers that are playing together, whatever's the lowest is ranked number 1, and it goes on from there. So if I highlight every 3rd golfer, these guys all played together. Got to be careful. One of these groups had a withdraw late. Okay, it was group 9. So that last group. Now here is why I go over Marquee Tee Times. I started noticing this way before, or not way before, but just before Phil Mickelson's win at Kiowa Island, the PGA Championship. So this goes back to what, 2020? Can't remember when he won, 2021. And I noticed that if we just take a look at the top 9 groups, how often do we see golfers from those groups in the optimal lineup? It end up being somewhere between 2 to 4 golfers every single week were in the optimal lineup from the Marquee Tee Times. So the best groups in the field. Go figure, right? That makes sense. But the other thing that I noticed to make this even like a little bit more interesting or weird or odd, whatever you want to call it, is most of the time the golfers weren't playing together that were in the optimal lineup. So that's where this rule of mine comes in. You want to select 2 to 4 groups and then only 1 golfer from each of those groups to put in your lineups. And what do we have here? Well, in group 3, we see over here, this is group 3. We had a Grillo, Straka, and Nick Taylor. Sepp Straka was in the optimal lineup. Oh wait, we had group 4 as well. Had another optimal lineup. That was Ludwig Aberg, Cameron Young, and Nick Hardy. Aberg was in the optimal lineup, but guess what? Cam Young was in the Sweet Spot Optimum, and we'll talk about that here shortly. And then we go down. Oh, there's 2 golfers right next to each other, but guess what? They didn't play together. Lucas Glover was in the optimal lineup at $7,200, and then in Group 8, Brendan Todd was the other guy in the optimal lineup. So this was 100% successful. The rules that I have provided you in the strategy video for the Marquee Tee Times followed through and were correct. And even when we talk about the Sweet Spot Optimal, which obviously follows the Sweet Spot rules when it comes to the Marquee Tee Times, those had 3 of the same golfers, but then 1 different but they were playing together. Ludwig Aberg, Cameron Young. So the sweet spot process for the John Deere Classic was 100% correct. And you might be wondering, well, okay, cool. Well, don't you follow the sweet spot process 100%? I do. I do follow the sweet spot process 100%. When we talk about groups that play together or golfers that play together, if you're watching the strategy video, and I know Shot Like Harden sees it already, when I play 70% of my lineups or 60% of my lineups with Emiliano Grillo, that means I'm not playing any of them with Sepp Straka. And that's where I went. I went Grillo instead of Straka. That's how I missed out on it. And that's fine. What if Grillo was not my guy? And instead I went with Hadwin and Grillo. Those were my two bums that I played this last week. I thought they were primed perfectly. But what if, I went with like Schenk and Aberg, because Aberg I was really high on, and Schenk I had no issue playing at all either. Schenk didn't score as many points to be in the optimal lineup, but it still could have set me up pretty decent. That's how I get to someone like Straka. And maybe I don't even play Straka that much, but I play him enough to get exposure to his win and maybe, to take down a GPP. So I'm not really going to be too hard on myself here, because I do believe if you can narrow down a golfer you want to play, like I had with Grillo, if you can narrow down a golfer you want to play and put them in 60 or 70% of your lineups, you're just maximizing the possibility to hit the optimal lineup or to hit the GPP winning lineup. So yeah, unfortunate that I ended up going with Grillo over Straka, but Straka, I'm being honest. Like, I'm going to be honest with you guys. He was never in my thought process of playing. I didn't even really think of him as a good course fit at this golf course. Obviously, I was wrong. So anyways, that's why. Now, one last thing I want to take a look at, just so you guys can see, is what was the optimal lineup versus the GPP versus the sweet spot optimal. And if the sweet spot optimal scored more than the GPP, then the entire process as a whole was 100%. So, optimal lineup, $49,700. Those golfers included Ludwig Aberg, Alex Smalley. So Ludwig was 10-1, Smalley is 8-9, Straka's 8-6. Then we had 3 7K golfers, Todd, Lucas Glover, Kevin Yu. Again, we left $300 on the table and we scored 722.5. Your GPP winning lineup scored 689 points. It left $200 on the table, and it started with 4 of the top guys up here. You had Aberg, Smalley, Todd, and Straka, Mark Hubbard at 77, and Grayson Sigg at 69. Now, that's pretty remarkable. 4 of the top guys. And then 2 other guys inside the top 13. That's why we have to target the optimal lineup. It's the only chance to win a GPP. And if you do hit the perfect lineup and someone dupes you, so be it. You had the perfect lineup. There's no doing better than that. So that's why I always target the optimal lineup. But I do it in a more realistic way. Because sometimes the optimal lineup leaves a lot of money on the table. Not this last week. But when we follow the sweet spot process rules, do we win? Or first of all, do we hit the optimal lineup? And the sweet spot optimal scored 708. The optimal score 722. So no. Following the sweet spot process, we do not hit the true the true optimal. However, does this beat the GPP winning score? If you already remembered 708, that does beat 689. So altogether, the sweet spot process was a complete success. Buckets were 100% successful, Marquee Tee Times were 100% successful, and the sweet spot optimal takes down the GPP winner. And those golfers, by the way, were the 3 up here: Straka, Todd, Smalley. Then it was Glover, Kevin Yu, Cameron Young. So, I mean, I guess if we started with Cameron Young and Alex Smalley, who I was completely off this last week, like literally, I'll admit it, I was completely off of Smalley. Chances are we could have got to Straka and the rest of the guys, because it followed the sweet spot optimal. So, pretty good week. Hopefully you guys did well. Let me know how you guys did in the down below. I know some of you guys reached out to me letting me know, you had a good week. JK Lawrence, I know you had a really good week. You sent me an email. That guy, JK Lawrence, had everybody inside the top 6. So he had 4 guys inside the top 6. One guy who finished like 20 something place, and then he had a miscut. So that guy was super close to taking down a GPP, super close. So good job, man. Yeah, let me know how the rest of you guys did down in the comment section.